Hello, this is Bob Keller. I'm going to walk through the construction of a solo over the tune Giant Steps by John Coltrane. So to start with, we're working with Impro-Visor, and here is a roadmap of the chord changes in Impro-Visor. You'll notice that there are three principal keys involved: B major, G major, and E flat major. So those are the three keys that cover the entire tune. And those keys happen to be separated as the tonics of those keys are separated by major thirds, which is one of the noteworthy aspects of Giant Steps. So within that structure, we have the tune divided into two halves. It's a 16-bar tune, and there are two sections of 8 bars, and then within those there are subsections of 4 bars each. So you'll notice that in the first section, the first 8 bars, we have these perfect cadences, and then in the second section we have straight cadences. I'll explain what the difference between those is. So perfect cadence is of the form 5 chord to a 1 chord, for example D7 or D9 in this case to G major 7. And we have another perfect cadence, B flat 9 to E flat major 7. So those are the perfect cadences. The difference between those and the straight cadences are that the straight cadence adds a 2 chord before the 5 chord. So we have A minor 9, D9, then G major 7, or in the case of E flat major, we have F minor 9, B flat 9, and then E flat major 7. Ending each of the sections is what is called a launcher. And the idea of a launcher is it's an approach that represents the first part of a straight cadence, but it occurs at the end of a section to launch the tonality at the beginning of the next section. So in this case, we have a 2-5 in G major that launches the major chord that starts the next section. Similarly, in the second 4 bars, we have a straight launcher, 2-5 in E flat major that launches the E flat beginning the third section, and then in the third section ends with a 2-5 in B major, launching the B major in the fourth section, and also that section happens to end also with the same kind of launcher that goes back to the beginning of the tune. So that's the structure of Giant Steps. And now we're going to put the roadmap aside and look at how we might create a solo for this over this tune. So this solo, we will work with a predominantly eighth note solo, and the strategy will be that we will fill in eighth notes throughout the tune, and then possibly edit out some of those eighth notes or change them, for example, to make them into whole notes or various other things that we might do to make the tune a little bit less monotonous in terms of the eighth notes we're going to see. So beginning at the very beginning here, we have this is the starting note of the melody of Giant Steps, which we'll simply erase because we're not going to be using it. So I'll press the X key, that erases that note, or we could also press the R key that changes it into a rest and merges it with the rest that's already there. Now, if you're really new at this, you might not know what the notes are in the B major 7, and that's kind of important for the construction of solo to know what those chord tones are. So to find that out, you can click this light bulb, which is called the advice menu, and it gives us various information about that chord. In particular, we can outline the chord tones, either ascending, descending, and so forth. We can also get other information like what are the color tones that go with that chord. So these are examples of so-called color tones. We can go back to the chord tones again, and so on. So that's some information we can find out about each chord in the piece. So let's begin our solo with just using those chord tones, and then there's a that's a half a bar of B major 7, and then it changes immediately to a D9. And so since A is the fifth of D9, we'll use the fact that that note is adjacent to the B flat here to get a kind of a nice approaching effect, a chromatic approach down a half step. So we have the ascending arpeggio on B7 and then going to the fifth of the D chord. And then let's continue our line by going downward. We'll use the third and then the seventh of that chord, and then perhaps the fifth of the chord. And then the next bar, we've got a new chord, G major 7, so we'll try to approach it. And one way to do that would be to select the third of this chord. And if we want to make it even more jazzy, we might attempt to move this up a half step, even though it's not strictly in the chord, and that will give us an approach, a half step approach upward to the G major 7. So let's see how that first part sounds. Doesn't sound bad, right? Because this kind of flows directly into the next chord. So even though this is not actually a chord tone, it is a so-called color tone with D9, and so it's not going to sound bad even though it's not really technically in the chord. Okay, so then moving on to the next bar, we will look at G major 7. So we've already got the first note, and let's go a little diatonic run. So diatonic run in the key of G, and let's then next chord will be B flat. So let's go to the fifth of that chord, and that gives us a nice another approach. So we've got this, and then we need to continue our B flat. So let's go upward, starting with the seventh, and then maybe the ninth, and then the third, and then that takes us right up to the tonic of the next chord, E flat major 7. And let's go down. And then here we're going to use a ninth, which is a color tone. And then we'll use the major 7th to approach. Okay, if you don't like the note that you entered, you can just click over it, or you can like that, or you can move the notes up or down by using the E key to move the half step up, or D to move it half step down. It's also another convenient way to modify. Okay, let's go to and here we're going to make a little, instead of the kind of monotonous up and down, we'll make a little zigzag kind of effect, perhaps. Okay, I don't really like that note, so I'm going to move over. So let's see what we've got so far for the first line here. Doesn't sound bad, to me at least. So now to continue on to the next line. So notice here that we're going from a G, which has no F, to a B flat 9, which does have an F, and that's kind of a nice effect that gives you a feeling of the flow of the tune to go from one chord to the next. So if we had continued on with the F and this chord were still standing, it would not resonate with the chord. But now, since we have this change, it's going to emphasize that change. So and now I'm thinking ahead now to the third of this chord, which is G. So I'm going to put an A flat in here to give me a nice chromatic approach to that G. And A flat happens to be in the B flat chord. And continuing the idea of the chromatic approaches by using an F here, which is the ninth of this chord, actually not actually in the chord, but it's a color tone, we can get an approach to the F sharp. Okay, let's change this to an E, which is in the chord, and then that's going to give us a chromatic approach to this C sharp here. Let's see. So enharmonically, it's a D flat. Let's see. Yeah, that should work fine. Let's. Oh wait, actually, we want that to be a sharp, not a flat. So I move it up 2 steps. And continue with chord tones, and then a color tone. So to change the enharmonic of a note, I'm just pressing the space bar, change it back and forth so it conforms to the idea of B, key of B, which is a sharp key. And we can do that also here on this note, changing it to an A sharp. Okay, and then so here we have C sharp going to C, another chromatic approach. And then E flat. So another chromatic approach there. Okay, I'd like to go a step higher. A nice thing with a major 7 chord or major 9 is starting on the 7th, and then you gets you a half step to the tonic. And here's another opportunity for a chromatic approach. Okay, so there's a red note. We didn't really intend to press that, so we're going to just punch right over it. Okay, so there I've got eighth notes everywhere, and let's just play that to get a sense of how it's going to sound before we edit it. Okay, good. So I'm going to touch up some of the enharmonics here, make that one into, whoops, didn't intend to do that. Okay, and make that one into a sharp. Well, actually, I should leave it that way because it's a D flat, and so it's a technically, yeah, that's a F sharp. So that should work there. And let's see any other touch-ups we need to do. So we can make this one an A sharp if we wanted to. This one to combine. And now let's consider editing out some of the notes. So one thing would be not to start the phrase on a downbeat. So we could take this note out, and then that would give us the chord sound on the first on the downbeat, but would not actually play a note. And let's see how that would work. Okay, so then I want this phrase to end at this B. So I'm going to take out this note. That makes this a phrase of its own. And then the next phrase will start here. And I'm sort of thinking ahead in my head about how this is going to sound and to decide where I want this phrase to end. So I think maybe here, but we'll try this and see. So I'll put a rest in there. That sounds pretty good for a transition to the next phrase. And then I think here would be good. And we'll do a little bit of imitation here. So when this kind of descending thing that ends here, we'll kind of imitate that and the phrase that comes up. And put in a rest here. And let's put in a rest there and then restore this. So far, here's what we have. Okay, so far so good. And now continuing on this phrase. I'm going to put a rest here to end that phrase. And the idea here is I'm trying to kind of create a little bit of a motif pattern, the way these phrases are ending, in my head at least. So let's hear how this whole thing sounds. Okay, the only thing I don't like is this gap right here. I'm kind of wishing I hadn't included that, but since that's the last thing I did, let me just undo that. And take out this note instead, so that the phrase is not so long that requires breathing in the middle of it. I'm not sure I totally like that, but I think I'm going to leave it as it is to end this video. So let's play it one more time. Okay, we'll let that stand. So thanks for watching the video.